Welcome back. In this session, we are going to look at scenarios in which we can use the dedicated SQL pool, and then we'll come up with the requirement for our project for this section of the course. As you've seen, we have a number of compute options available within Synapse, and they all have a lot in common, but at the same time, they have their differences. With its massively parallel processing engine, the dedicated SQL pool offers the capability to perform both big data processing, as well as combined with its MPP architecture and the sophisticated storage. It can be used as a serving layer with subsequent response times. Let's take a look at some of these solution designs. Firstly, we can use Synapse pipelines to copy data directly from the external data sources to the dedicated SQL pool. We can then use a dedicated SQL pool to process the data and serve to the data consumers. This is a traditional data warehouse solution without the need for a data lake. But with the increasing need for machine learning and ad hoc exploration, the data is expected to be available in the data lake, so we can use a solution like this to land the data in the data lake. First, dedicated SQL pool can then use the technology called polybase copy command to read this data in parallel from the data lake. It can then build a data warehouse and serve to the consumers. In some cases, you may want to perform some of the processing in serverless SQL pool. As shown here, it could be identifying the changes in the incoming data and creating the data files, converting CSV or JSON data to Parquet for ad hoc exploration, etc. In this case, this dedicated SQL pool can read the Parquet files using polybase and continue with the rest of the processing. In other cases, you may want to use the Spark pool to perform big data analytics or machine learning and use dedicated SQL pool to serve the data. And finally, you could have a solution in which you want to use all of these compute options as shown here. Let's now talk about our requirement for this section of the course. As you know, we process the data using serverless SQL pool all the way from bronze to silver to gold layer. We now want to make this data available in dedicated SQL pool for consumption. So effectively, a dedicated SQL pool is the serving layer here. We are not planning to do any transformations here. Just so you're clear, we can use dedicated SQL pool to model the data and create facts and dimensions as we would in other RDB-based database solutions. We are not doing that here and using dedicated SQL pool as just a serving layer. I just want to give you an introduction to dedicated SQL pool. In this course, I'll do a separate course for a dedicated SQL pool and will cover other aspects in detail there. We will use the aggregated trib data from the Go layer for this purpose. Now let's take a look at how to achieve this using dedicated SQL pool. We can create an external table on the data files in our gold layer. This will allow us to read the data using polybase utilizing the power of MPP architecture. Once we have the external table, we can write a simple ctos statement to write to the internal table. The other option is to use the copy command provided by Synapse to copy the data from the data lake to dedicate a SQL pool. This approach is much simpler than the other approach, as we don't have to create external objects, such as external table, external file format, and external data source. Also, it's recommended by Microsoft as it is considered to perform better. Once the internal table is created, we can define the appropriate distribution, clear indexes, partitions, etc. for our internal table. This table can then be used in Power BI to create reports. Hope this gives you enough information to get started, and that's the end of this session.